When the trailer dropped for The Munsters, the internet blew up and there was a lot of negativity out there. People weren't excited for this film. There's a lot of hate. We thought we would check it out, so we watched Rob Zombie's The Munsters.
Right out the gate, just a heads up, this will have spoilers. We're just gonna talk about the movie a little bit and talk about the good parts and the bad parts. In general, I am a Rob Zombie fan. House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, earlier Rob Zombie stuff, definitely better than some of his later stuff. The Dragula song that Rob Zombie is popular for is based on The Munsters itself. So Rob Zombie himself is a fan.
And I'm actually a fan of The Munsters. The internet was mad about the color. I was a little concerned with it being a prequel. So anyone who grew up watching The Munsters, whatever version it was, because I grew up watching the TV show as reruns, but then there was like the remake made for TV movies that I also watched that would have been for my generation. I was worried when I heard it was a prequel.
I would agree with that because you never know. They're gonna take something that's beloved from old generations, try and like redo it. We've seen that with Halloween, but I did like that. I love Rob Zombie's Halloween. I know that might be a hot take for some, but I think it was pretty solid. Even though Halloween 78 is my favorite movie, he did a good job changing things up. So with The Munsters, I kind of expected that. I watched a little bit of Munsters growing up. I was more of an Addams Family fan, and House of Frightenstein I would catch more often than The Munsters. But like, they kind of all exist in the same world. Yeah. To some degree, you know? Saturday morning stuff that you would just flick through and you're like, oh, cool. It's creepy, spooky shit that I want to watch.
To me, this film definitely had more of a Frightenstein feel than a Munsters feel because of the wacky characters and like the 60s vibe to it.
The biggest thing that people took away was like, oh, it looks different, it's too colorful, it looks cheap. I was actually kind of surprised. The aesthetics and everything looked really great. It is not necessarily a Rob Zombie feel. Rob Zombie makes like trailer park garbage looking stuff most of the time. He threw Mikey in this like rundown trashy house. Anything Sherry Moon is in basically looks like trash and smells like cigarettes. But this was the opposite of that. Everything has green and purple lights all over the place. It's extravagant. It's huge because they're living in this castle. All the different sets that you go to, this little town in Transylvania is just great. It looks amazing. I did not expect that from the trailers because the trailers really, they show like, the teaser trailer showed the intro, which was a shot for shot like remake of the original intro, which was cool and in black and white. And then you see the color stuff and you're like, wait, this looks just like a poster board with some candles on it or something. But when you actually watch the movie, it looks way better than the trailer suggests.
You gotta give props for the world that he's created. This takes place in Transylvania for most of the film. So you have a lot of callbacks to the Universal monsters. You have a lot of callbacks to things that people who are gonna like recognize and be fans of are gonna be like, oh, look at this. It's the Abbott and Costello meets Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We've got Creature from the Black Lagoon just like walking around, which probably was the worst costume if I'm being honest.
Yeah. If you're gonna criticize anything, that's the thing as far as when the makeup and the props are concerned. But even the makeup design of everybody else looked great. I think Grandpa looked amazing. Hermie, oh my God, he looked perfect.
I think Jeff Daniel Phillips did a fantastic job as Herman Munster.
I'll take a bottle of the B positive. No, I'm gonna splurge. O negative.
It worked. He was wholesome, he was oblivious, and he told bad jokes and laughed.
Yeah, I think like the acting in general was pretty good. I like Sherry Moon. I like her more as Baby, and I understand why people don't really like her because Rob Zombie keeps putting her in every single movie. I think that's adorable. Imagine being in a relationship where it's like, no, I think the best actress is my wife. Come on. She did a pretty good job as Lily. I don't know that it was super accurate, but it is what it is. Grandpa kind of killed it though. He was one of the funniest characters in the movie, and Herman had his moments, but they're few and far between. Which leads us to the biggest issue of this movie. It looks nice, it looks great, it has the Munsters feel. Like if you took isolated scenes and even the B-roll that I'm showing over me talking right now, it looks pretty good. This is exactly what I would expect going into a Munsters movie, except it has more colors. However, even though they're replicating a lot of stuff from the old days, it feels weird. Herman is supposed to be this fun character. He's got the brain of a comic. He's supposed to be making bad jokes. But all of the jokes that aren't around Herman are also bad. So they're just kind of like, they're puns, and some of them, like, yeah, sure, they're clever. But the editing is very odd because it feels like there is space for laugh tracks. Like they'll make a joke, wait for it. Okay, go to the next joke.
You're so manly.
It's like there's always a lot of breathing room for the audience to laugh, but they're not jokes that you would inherently laugh at because they're not that great.
And she swore she would get revenge on me. They all say that.
I think what plays off of that now is like trying to figure out who this movie is for. At first, you're like, is it for people like the Munsters? Is it for children? Maybe parents who want to bring their kids to see this movie? Because it does come off as like a kid's film, and it's not for either of them.
There are jokes that kids will laugh at, for sure. I just don't think there's enough like slapstick comedy for children. So it's all based on the little quips and the little puns that they make. But kids aren't smart enough to pick up on that stuff. Only adults would be.
How do you keep a grouchy old vampire in suspense? I'll tell you later.
So, and it's not for teenagers because they're vaping and doing TikToks. They don't give a shit.
And that's what's funny too, because you could tell like Rob Zombie shot this almost like a music video style with the montages and all the transitions. Now the transitions were great, but that's the MTV generation. Anyone who watched MTV isn't going to be like, man, did you see Sonny and Cher like music scene? Hilarious.
And that's a great example because that is pinpointing the older generation who seems to be the target audience when it plays more like a Disney special. So it's almost just nostalgia bait, but it's not fun enough. And it doesn't match the same humor as the original. And that's what's tricky.
And like, I actually got really excited for about 10 minutes of the film. When they get to California and they get to Mockingbird Lane, it felt like a Munsters movie. The neighborhood is normal. It's like suburbia. The whole idea of the Munsters was acceptance in the fact that they look different, but they're trying to like live their lives in California. So they have this moment in this film where it felt like the TV show. And it was a funny introduction because they're playing on the idea that it's Halloween, so they think everyone's in a costume, in masks.
But the problem is, that's the end of the movie.
It should have been flipped. It should have been 20 minutes of Transylvania and then 2 hours of California.
I agree with that. We forgot to mention Jorge Garcia and Richard Brake at the beginning, like putting Herman together was great. It was as awkward as the rest of the movie, but their performances, again, were as good as the material they were given. I was a big Lost fan, so like seeing Jorge was hilarious. And Richard Brake always does what he can with every role.
The one thing you could take away from this is it looked like all of the actors were having fun. And I bet Rob Zombie, all of them, had a blast making this film. And that is kind of important in itself. As much hate as this film is gonna get, you have to remember the people making the film and what they're doing. This is more of a personal project than I need to make millions off of this project.
But as far as this one goes, I think it was more style than substance. Everything visually looked great. All the performances were great. However, what they were saying, you don't care about, so it doesn't matter how good of an actor you are. It's just throwaway dialogue with jokes that have puns in them, and some of them are funny, but nothing was laugh out loud in this movie. It's unfortunate, but I just don't think it worked. And you couple that with how long it is, and it's just like, why are we still doing this? If we didn't like the first 20 minutes, it's not worth watching the rest. So I'm gonna give this 1.5 Elvira cameos out of 5.
I came into this film not looking forward to watching it because I just didn't like the premise. And I'm pleasantly surprised. It was much better than I thought it was going to be. I'm not saying it was great, but what I was worried about did happen. The whole prequel concept was overplayed and drawn out, that the only parts I was looking forward to was when they got to Mockingbird Lane, to the story I'm familiar with. There wasn't any dilemmas. There wasn't anything in the origin story that had like a good story arc.
Hey, Grandpa didn't want Lily to have Herman.
I know, but in the end, he just caved. When you think you're gonna get that drama, when you think, oh, what are they gonna do now that the castle's gonna be sold, or maybe Grandpa is gonna like find a new husband for Lily, it doesn't happen. Lily and Herman literally fall in love right away, and there's no problem with that. There should be some dilemma in there. And them losing the castle is not the dilemma. It's a stepping stone to what the original story was about. I just can clearly tell this film is for Rob Zombie. I'm not mad at him for what he's done because I like the series. So if something grows from this, that would make me happy. And I think all the actors did a great job. The sets were great, but I really don't think you should watch it. Hope for a sequel. That's, I think, what may be more enjoyable. So with that being said, I'm gonna give this film 2 disco vampires out of 5.
As always, thank you for watching. Like this video and comment below with your thoughts on the film if you've seen it. If you haven't and you do want to check it out, link is in the description. And if this is your first time here, make sure you subscribe. We do all types of stuff here. We talk about some nostalgia bait movies, some mockbusters. We dig through the crates and try and find bad movies that are also kind of good. But we hope to see you on the next one.
I'm gonna go.